Have I come to this planet to pay bills? Leaders are not born, they are made.
So I want to meet you for half an hour. How much will you charge? Everyone will be buying and selling time.
विश्व में केवल 10% ऐसे लोग हैं जो गोल सेट करते हैं.
The manager converted into a leader and you said, we all know, let's do it.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I'm so happy to be back here on my BSB Live after a little gap. And today I'm super excited. Super excited because I have a very, very special guest all the way from Johannesburg in South Africa. And my conversations with her have been so exciting that I'm looking forward to a great, exciting conversation with Ntsiki Mkhize. I've had a little tough time in pronouncing her name. I'm sorry for that. So, Ntsiki, I am so happy to have you here. Tell me, how was your journey from South Africa to Mumbai? How was your flight?
Oh, thank you. My virtual flight. My virtual flight was fantastic. It's so wonderful to be with you this afternoon and to everybody who's joining you. So we're, I think, 3 hours behind in South Africa. But one of my intentions this year was to connect globally. So I'm so glad that technology can facilitate this conversation.
Absolutely. And I must also tell you that you're probably the first South African to be on my live show, and I'm so excited about that part.
Yes, that's
Right.
fantastic.
So, how do you feel right now being virtually in India while sitting in South Africa?
So I'd love to come to India. So I'm so glad. I hope this is sowing seed for the next step. And the next time we have this conversation, I'm hoping we can be sharing a stage together in India.
Absolutely, and let's make it possible when we have that manifestation. I'm sure we can work on that, and hope to see you soon in Mumbai, in India, anywhere. Okay, so right, so I will straight away get on to the conversation, and before I get onto the conversation, I would certainly like to introduce my guest to all my viewers. So, ladies and gentlemen, uh, Ntsiki is the founder of Meant Her and founding editor of the Meant Her magazine and the self-published author of My Hall of Mentors. Now, she's a certified 5 lens practitioner and resilience up facilitator with a master's in social innovation. She's an avid international speaker, facilitator, and MC. She's a TEDx speaker. She was featured as the youngest speaker at the International Speakers Summit 2019 and the Epic Entrepreneur Conference 2020. Ntsiki is currently a contributor on SAFM on self-development segment on the Full Circle. Her TV career started as a guest host on ETV's Sisterhood, news anchor on ANN 7, and later host of Career Connect on Business Day TV. She serves on the board of the School of Entrepreneurship, Entrepreneurial Planning Institute, and the Academic Advisory Board for the University of KwaZulu Natal School of Management, Information Technology, and Governance. When she is not on stage, facilitating or coaching, Ntsiki tends to her apiary and grows garlic and herbs on a farm in the Midwal. So that was a brief introduction of hers. There's what I have in front of me is much more, but Ntsiki, can I ask you to elaborate on that and tell us a little more about uh, you and your personal work?
Thank you so much, Sushil. And that was so well captured. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think for me, this is one of the reasons why I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today, because a lot of the work that I do, whether it's with entrepreneurs, whether it's with women, young people, corporates and their teams, or with organizational leaders, is around showing up as your best self. So personal mastery, personal development, understanding your personality style and the people that you're working with, and in all of that, being clear on how, one, you show up in purpose and with purpose, but then also understanding how do you remain resilient on that journey. And my career has been, this portfolio life and engagement with people across different spheres in all of those disciplines. And so I'm always fulfilled when I have the opportunity to share these tools with people to help them figure out how do they be resilient and show up as the best version of a leader of themselves.
Wow, wonderful. That's brilliant. And uh, just one second, I think I forgot to turn my, yeah, okay. So, uh, when I was going through your website and I went through certain Instagram videos and all of yours about a week ago, I discovered that there's so much of commonality between what you do and what I do, and we resonate quite a lot, to the extent that you've been talking about bounce forward and resilience and all that. And one of the keynotes that I've done, which has been popular, and I've done at least 10 of them in the last 6 7 months, is on Are You Future Ready? And I've been talking on the same subject. So resilience and bouncing forward and all that. So therefore, uh, I would like you to tell me a little more about your work on bounce forward. What is this exactly? How are you doing it? And what is it about? Till we go and specifically talk about bounce forward a little later.
Yes, so I think for us specifically at this time of year, in South Africa, it's spring. So there is a little bit of, change in the external environment that's bringing a little bit of promise, a little bit of excitement. But on a financial calendar year, people are kind of pushing towards the end of the year. And this is where you start seeing year-end fatigue. You start seeing people, who haven't been managing their energy and personal resources well, maybe tethering on that brink of burnout. Maybe in other countries like in Europe or the US, where they might be going into fall now and they've come from their summer vacation. They might be feeling a little bit well rested, but have that urgency of, we're going into that next wind before the year ends, and so let's do that efficiently. And when we often talk to people about fatigue and coming back from when you've had some downtime, people often think about, oh yes, I just need to bounce back, or I just need to get my energy levels back up. But we like to think about resilience as an aspect of having that ability to bounce forward, which means you understand that if you've been off sick, or if you've been tired, or even if you've gone on holiday, that while you were away, you've missed some time in terms of work or relationships, and you do need to catch up. And so when we think, feel, and act, we have to think about how do we show up holistically in those areas to enable us to bounce forward in our relationship, bounce forward in our work, bounce forward in our own success, but also to bounce forward in your resilience, that you kind of think about it as a tank of petrol, and you know that your trip only requires a quarter of a tank, but you just make sure that you have a little reserve left in there, so that should the trip have a detour that's unexpected, that there's enough reserves that will allow you to consistently bounce forward.
So good, so good. So let me share with you that in during the COVID, I came across, or I started doing something on. I started doing a program called Train the Online Trainer, and in
Mhm.
that, because I'm talking of the period somewhere around May 2020, that I used to tell people that everyone is talking about how soon
Yeah,
after COVID we'll be able to bounce back. And I said, the moment you say bounce back, your mind takes you back to February 2020. And if you
absolutely.
are able to go to that place, you would be totally outdated. So, why don't you bounce forward And by then I had not met Joni, and I didn't know her bounce forward and the way you are facilitating that bounce forward principle. But I had read a book on bounce forward, and I was familiar with this term, but I didn't know that it was her creation. I didn't know that she was the originator. Right. Now, coming back to what I'm saying is that that just one second, my laptop battery was going. Okay. Yeah. Thank God I noticed it on time. So, what I was coming to is that I started telling, and that was my visualization, that let's say when we come out of COVID, and we didn't know that time whether it will be a month or 2 months or 6 months or a
Mhm.
year, nobody knew that. But we said we started understanding one thing: it won't be what it was in February, it will be a different world. So I used to say that can we be prepared for imagining or predicting what would be the world after COVID and start preparing for that. And then also, history says that all crises that have, you can talk about whether it was a world war or the 2008 recession, or even the 2611 or whatever, all these have
Mhm.
had one thing in common, and that is that the world appeared or emerged stronger and better after the crisis than it was when it went into it. And therefore, to be prepared to move, to be able to go ahead. And in my leadership, I also talk about the similar thing in a term called good leaders operate ahead of the predictability curve. That means you
Yeah.
should be able to predict what's going to happen. So this is, am I correct in saying that your bounce forward principle is quite akin to what I've just said?
Absolutely, and I think, obviously COVID was something we couldn't have predicted on a global scale. But when you look at things that happen in our macro environment, that you can really think about what are the potential risks, so if you do your SWOT analysis, you can evaluate your environment and consider what could potentially happen. It also requires you for a leader to be in tune with your team and what your team needs and what your team is going through so that you can also understand the energy levels and the resilience levels amongst your team. So when we think about that think, feel, act, it's consistently as a leader going through those and projecting into the future and making sure that you're preparing yourself and your team for that which could potentially happen in the future.
Wow. So we are now on the subject of bounce forward. That's what we are talking about. And let me get a little more specific now. And before that, and just striking me, before we get to
Mm.
bounce forward, can I know a little more out of my own curiosity? Know a little bit more about your mentor, because that was fascinating me too. Mentor,
Yes.
what is that project? What do you do? The audience would certainly like to know, and would like to probably connect with you, because I found it fascinating, and I'm sure the viewers here will also be fascinated.
Yes, so mentor is really what I'm passionate about. So, as you mentioned in your introduction, Sushila, I have a master's in social innovation. And my research that I did was around the social entrepreneurship ecosystem and how it supports female social entrepreneurs, specifically in South Africa. And how efficient is that? And in my time working with entrepreneurs in South Africa and while I was in the UK studying, consistently one of the things that came up is that people said that they struggle to find mentors. And mentors are necessary if you're starting a business, if you're entering a space that you're unfamiliar with. It's helpful to have people who've been on the journey, who can help you navigate the journey and can help you avoid pitfalls. So I then created Mentor, which is a global mentorship network that supports female social entrepreneurs. And we help women to start their businesses, so to work through their idea and to then implement that and to have a startup. And our big focus, and you were talking just now about what people thought would happen after the pandemic. And one of the big things we realized in South Africa and many parts of Africa, and I'm sure in India as well, is that women really are the backbone of our societies. That when we look at a lot of nonprofit organizations, or if we look at a lot of organizations that exist in the third sector, those businesses are run by women, charities, food security, soup kitchens, orphan and vulnerable children, care, those sort of things, a lot of those are run by women. So for us, it was to say, how do we support these women? One, to connect with mentors. Two, to become sustainable organizations so that they can have continued impact for the group of people that they're supporting, but also to be able to move beneficiaries to customers, and then to look at how do we solve for social problems. And I'm a big believer that there's really good business ideas if you can solve for social problems. And that's our big thing. And then ultimately to connect entrepreneurs with one another. So me sitting here in South Africa, I can connect with Sushil in India and go, there are so many synergies, and I can learn from you and what you have done that works well, and think about how I can adapt that to my context. So we've got Mentor as a business, and we have our membership community. And then we also have Mentor Magazine, where we share inspirational stories. And then we have our Mentor podcast as well, where we are spotlighting entrepreneurs and really giving light to the incredible social impact work that women are doing globally.
That's brilliant. I'm so impressed. And thought that is popping up in my mind right now is that very soon I'm sure the women in India are going to benefit from you, because I am certainly going to connect you with some women who would love to get that mentorship. And being a mentor myself, and I'm very fond of mentoring, because it also gives us a lot of, it gives us a lot of satisfaction when you are
Yeah.
able to mentor people, and and even a small little change that happens in their life, that really brings in so much of satisfaction. So yes, we certainly look forward to that. And now let's come to our prime concern, and we go straight uh, to where is it gone? Sorry. Yeah. So we are going to bounce forward, right? So what I want you to now tell us is, uh, can you explain the concept of bounce forward? The way you have already said something about it, but if you can
Yes.
simplify it for a common man to know, common man or woman. These days, one has to be sure that you are not saying man. Okay, so yeah, common person, any common person who may not know the term technically, not
Yeah.
technically, what does how would you explain the concept of bounce forward, and how could a common person make use of it in their daily life?
Absolutely. So, I mean, one of my exciting things around Mentor is that we also then work with women in helping them develop their leadership skills. And in that is their ability to be resilient. And in being resilient is your ability to bounce forward. So for the everyday person, if you're thinking about what does bounce forward mean for you, it is your ability to show up with all the energy you need to stay on top of things. That's sort of the simplest way I can put it. And you mentioned earlier on my business partner, Joni Petty, and the business is called Making Resilient People. And for us, Bounce Forward is the tool that we use in helping people to be resilient. And I said earlier that oftentimes when you talk about resilience, people think about just how do I bounce back? But when we talk about resilience, we have a three-pronged approach that looks at being prepared, bouncing back, and bouncing forward. So the preparation is to say, if you have a very busy season, so if you are in, year end, or if you are um, working on launching a new product, or if you've got small children in the house, or if you're planning a wedding, there's all these things that are happening. So you have to prepare your schedule, you have to prepare yourself, your energy levels, and the demand on yourself. So preparation is key, because if you don't prepare, things will fall apart. Then the second element is to bounce back. All right, so how do I get back on my feet once something has happened? So that's just being in, that crisis happened, and I'm now just breathing above water. But where we want to be, which is where the magic happens and where peak performance happens, is in our ability to bounce forward. So how do we think, feel, and act in a manner that allows us as individuals and the teams that we show up in to optimize our performance as individuals and as teams? And that's really what we mean when we talk about bouncing forward. And there's many different things that you could look at in terms of managing your own personal resilience. what we like to work with is an acronym that we call BOOST, right? And BOOST is,
Well, yeah.
and I'll unpack that a little bit for you just now, but I'll share on that. But really, when you think about how do you show up, your environment, the people around you, and the way you carve out time for yourself, your mindset, and the way that you show up should all be aligned in such a way that you can show up in a way that allows you to remain resilient, but also to bounce forward to the things that you want to accomplish.
So we were talking about the three-pronged approach, which I really liked. So for everyone to really understand and take it with you, it is prepare, bounce back, and bounce forward. It really, these days everyone is looking for tools, and that makes things simpler because otherwise it remains a concept, a theory. So you need to know
Yes.
the how part of it. You see, it's okay for people to understand what to do. What to do is one thing, but people also want to know how to do it.
Wow.
So I think that is a beautiful thing which I just heard us say, boost. Yeah, so let's go a little deeper into what is boost and how does it work.
Yes, I'll share Boost with you. And I would like for our listeners to have a example in their mind. So think about, when are you most stressed? When do you undergo stress, either at home or at work? It's only September now, but I'm sure some people are already excited for Christmas or December. So thinking about what happens over the holidays. Do you have family coming over? Are you preparing something special for the holidays? Be mindful of that, right? And when we think about that three-pronged approach, we can then go, okay, I can prepare for what's about to happen. And I know how busy things get over the festive season. And so by the time all of that is finished, I'm going to have to bounce back to my usual energy levels. And then it's going to be a new year. So I have to be prepared and ready to start working. So I need to bounce forward into the new year. So as we go through Boost, I want you to think about, what are some of the elements of Boost that you can incorporate into your own life. And you don't have to use all of them. So the rest of these you will keep in your back pocket. But I want you to take one thing away, right? So we know from a neuroscience perspective that our brain can only effectively focus on 3 tasks at a time. So if you try to do all of these, you might feel overwhelmed and not execute anything. And then the other thing that we know is that we work really well as individuals when we have something that we commit to. So as I go through Boost, I want you to pick one thing that you will then start implementing and see what works for you. So Boost is an acronym that we have on our hand. So if you go with me, starting with the B on our pinky, and Sheil, we normally use this when we make a pinky promise to someone, like, I pinky promise you I'm going to do this. And for us, the pinky promise is around bed, right? So do you get enough sleep? And that's a big one. You know how you feel when the dog was barking in the morning, or there was a very bad storm and something woke you up in the middle of the night. And so when you wake up in the morning, you don't feel as rested. And therefore, your own ecological system isn't as prepared as it needs to be to deal with the things that you need to focus on for the day. So you might feel yourself having a bit of a slump throughout the day. You might feel yourself feeling more tired throughout the day. So sleeping well is a non-negotiable. So some quick stats is, you want to have a minimum 7 hours of sleep every night. There's lots of good research that's come out. Ariana Huffington has the book that she wrote on the sleep revolution. Dr. I forget his, Michael Walker has a book now as well on sleep, and he also has a wonderful TED talk as well. So there's lots of research Matthew Walker, sorry, that has come out on sleep. And what we're seeing is that there's research around Alzheimer's and dementia for people who don't sleep in later years, because when you sleep, your mind has what is called a glymphatic system, which washes out toxins called beta amyloid, which form between the neurons in your brain. So when you find yourself having that brain fog where you're forgetting things, or you're not feeling quite as sharp as you should, check your sleeping patterns. And not just that, you also want to try go to bed 2 hours before midnight, so that you have your good REM cycle, deep REM cycle sleep. And in that as well, getting off your devices before you go to bed. So all of us, we love to be on our phones or our laptops before we sleep, scrolling through social media or doing last minute emails. Carve out the time before you go to bed to review your day, to do some journaling, to maybe read a book, a nice paperback book, and really set your intentions for the next day and reflect. And that just really helps you to get into a good space to have some sleep. So pinky promise to ourselves, Sushil, is that
Okay.
we're
And,
going to
and,
sleep
and
better.
before you go to the next one, before you go to the next one, I also want to show you that I am now reading this book which also talks a lot about sleep. Okay, and it is about aging, and it says that you can slow down your aging if you take care of your sleep and your nutrition and all that. So but I have been a big defaulter on sleep even today. Although I do get 7 8 hours of sleep, I do that
Mm.
minimum 7 hours, but I sleep late and get up late, and I really want. I'm trying to get out of that habit, but some may not very successful in doing that. Yeah. So let's go over to the
Yes.
next
Thank
one.
you. Thank you for sharing that so honestly. So it's not a commitment schedule where you have to now put yourself under pressure. So even if you're adding power naps throughout the day, a good power nap in the afternoon, or if you are somebody who's very nocturnal and you sleep late, try to go to bed 30 minutes earlier. So even if it's not 2 hours before midnight, take the easiest step that makes you translate that action into something that you can actually do, right? And that's what we're here to empower people to do. So it's not to overhaul your entire schedule immediately, but to say, okay, I'll still sleep late, but I won't be on any devices before I go to bed. That's one better step than nothing. So once you've pinky promised to
One
sleep,
baby step.
yes, one baby step. Our next one is O, and that's on our ring finger. And the old wives' tale is that the reason we put the ring on this finger is because there's a vein that runs from here to our hearts. So with this one, we're asking that you open your heart. And when we open our hearts, we have oxygen that flows, right? So our blood is pumping, and the more blood pumps, the more oxygen goes throughout your system and goes to your brain. And for us, it's micro bursts of activity. So we're not saying get a gym membership and go to the gym for an hour a day, but we're saying find those micro bursts throughout the day where you can just move. So if you're sitting at a desk, most people don't have good posture, or our desks aren't ergonomic, so we're slouched over and we're working like this. So consciously remember just to have good posture, so you breathing deep at your desk. Set an alarm, stand up every hour on the hour, do some squats, do some lunges, go for a walk around the building if you can. Even when you go to the supermarket, people like to I don't know how people shop in India, but in South Africa, people fight for the closest parking spot to the door. So choose the parking space that's furthest from the door, so that you have some walking distance to the building. So really think about, how do you build in movement as part of your day? So we weren't made to be um, static as individuals, right? We're sentient in our lifestyle, but we're meant to move. Back in the day when we were in the savannah hunting for food, a large part of our day had movement in it. So we are built to move. So baby step, you don't have to go to the gym, but find movement. So whether you wake up in the morning and do some stretches, whether you want to do some pre-bedtime yoga that's going to help you fall asleep, incorporate things that work for you and get those micro bursts of activity throughout the day.
Very good. I've just got this gentleman, Dave Buck, a very close friend of mine, and we also share a common subject of time management. So I've written a book called $1 Million Second on time management, and Dave and I exchange a lot of ideas, and I've learned so much of more time management from him. So thank you, Dave, for being here. And let's now go to our next point. Yeah.
Yeah, so another thing that's closely linked to oxygen, with our opening up our hearts, is the next finger, which I won't show you because that's a rude finger. But the opposite of that is kindness, right? So how do we open up our hearts to be kind? And it's a very brief one, but practicing random acts of kindness, being kind to yourself, being kind to others, and really being open in how we engage. And I'm gonna link that with my next one, which is on the index finger, and that is to stop sugar and start supplements, right? So if we link how we sleep and how we move, how we eat also has to be an important part of that. And similar to the research that's come out on the impacts on your brain if you don't sleep well, we also know there's impact on your brain if you're not eating well. Not just that, but if you're eating lots of sugar. So what has come out again is links around Alzheimer's and dementia for people who eat lots of sugar. And if you'd like to watch a nice documentary, there's a documentary called That Sugar Film that really shows us how many food options are available on the shelves that are absolutely processed and have so much added sugar to them. And you really want to think about your sugar intake, and not just as how much sugar goes into my tea and coffee, but cakes that you eat, your cereals, your healthy snacks throughout the day, even healthy snacks that are dried fruits but have added sugar, or nice bars that are seed and nut bars, but they've had syrup added into it. So there's so many sneaky places where sugar shows up, but we know that sugar is highly addictive, and that sugar causes inflammation in our bodies as well. And if you think about how do I support my heart, how do I support my brain and the way that I show up, you then also want to think about when we eat food, we know that 20% of what we eat, the body burns that for our brains. So if you're eating not good stuff, your brain is burning 20% of that to fire up your brain. Your body's burning 20% for your brain. So you want to think about, am I feeding my ecosystem the tools that it needs to perform at its best? And on the other side of that, I farm for fun, but I'm really passionate about food security. And because of GMO foods and many other things that are processing, the nutrition in our soil is depleted. So the World Health Organization used to say that you needed 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. They've now bumped that number up to 10. And if we look at really how depleted the soil is, there's less and less nutrients in our soil. But also, if you have a very busy day, you might not have the time to eat all the things that you need to that are helpful and healthy for your body. And the general rule of thumb is that your plate should be colorful. You should be eating the rainbow. So if you eat the rainbow, you're getting various minerals and vitamins in. So if you can't do that, really look at the supplements that you should take. So your omega-3 for your brain, looking at taking magnesium if you're struggling to sleep to support the function of developing melatonin so you can fall asleep, looking at your vitamin C and vitamin D, and really going, if I'm not eating enough to support my ecosystem, what supplements can I take to make my ecosystem better able to be resilient? And I just want to highlight here, the reason why this is important is that life can be stressful, right? We can't manage the macro environment. So stressors are abundant in our external environment. So we need to ensure in our ability to be resilient and bounce back that we have an ecosystem that is able to deal with the stressors. So you might have anxiety, and that anxiety might make you not want to eat or not want to sleep or whatever it is. But if you've been building up an ecosystem that facilitates the sleeping and the eating, you can better adjust. And so not only are you resilient and able to bounce back after a crisis, but your ecosystem is such that you can then bounce forward once you've dealt with a particular crisis. So really thinking about all of those things, think, feel, and act, facilitating that through your resilience and how you manage your ecosystem to support that.
Absolutely. I'm totally impressed because what you have said, not that I have not known most of it, but the way you have put it across and the way it has been simplified and explained was brilliant. So thank you so much. And yeah, so we still have something left of the boost.
Yes, so the last one is on our thumbs. So I think this is a universal thumbs up for things if things are going well. And this for us is just to make time for fun, schedule in time to just enjoy life, enjoy your own time, enjoy time with your family. And I watched your TED talk, Sushil, and you spoke so beautifully around the quality of relationships. And asking the question, why is I just put on this planet just to work? And for us to realize that there's more to life, so much more to life than just working. As human beings, we are multifaceted, multidimensional individuals. And if I had to say to you, for a lot of people, if I met you today for the first time, or if I bumped into you at a function and I said, hey, how are you? I haven't seen you in a while. How are things going? You'll probably tell me about your family, about work or your studies, and maybe one other thing, right? And we'll forget that there's the part of us that is our health, physical, emotional, spiritual, financial. There is our financial goals, our wealth goals. There is our own personal development, not just for work purposes, but for me as an individual. Do I want to learn a new skill? Do I want to learn a new language, right? So we have a life pie as people, and there's multiple segments to this life pie. So really make the time to have fun, make the time to express gratitude, make the time to journal. There's wonderful research that was done in the Happiness Advantage. There's a book called The Happiness Advantage, and a TED Talk as well, that if you practice gratitude, you teach your brain to scan the world for the positive instead of the negative. If you practice journaling, your brain doesn't distinguish between something happening for real or you just reimagining that experience. So if you journal about a positive experience, that allows your brain to release those positive hormones, so your dopamine and your serotonin, and that stimulates happiness or putting your brain in a positive state. So really making time to have fun.
Absolutely. And do you know what's the spelling of fun, by the way?
Tell me.
So I've coined my own spelling of fun when I do my workshops. The fun is
Yes.
FUNNNNNN. So, so that is the spelling of fun. Thank you very much, Nsiki. You've really come out with some beautiful things, and I'm really really fascinated. Now, let's go a little more towards leadership, and let me ask you, how do you think it is important for leaders to be resilient? Why should they look into leadership as a place where it is very important to be resilient, and not
Mm.
only resilience for themselves but also make their teams resilient, their organizations resilient actually.
Yeah, so when people feel good, people perform, right? And as a leader, one of your objectives is to drive performance and to get results out of your people. So you can't think about getting results as I'm going to drive this person as hard as I can and they must just perform and that's it, right? Because companies spend exponential amounts of money on training, development, and replacing staff. So if you have a high turnover in your organization, you want to look at that. So as leaders, that's the one aspect, so making sure that we have teams that are staying with us and growing with us. And then secondly, making sure that you have teams that are performing, right? So am I creating an environment where people are able to perform because they've got those energy levels, especially when they are operating under pressure? And then finally, the biggest aspect that any leader needs to do is you have a vision for the organization, for your team, where you want to go, and you need to, one, get buy-in, but two, make sure that people can get there. So yes, we have buy-in, but the car doesn't have petrol in it. So how are we going to get there? So yes, get the buy-in from the people. So this is where we're going. This is why we're going there. This is how we're going to get there. Oh, and by the way, let's all make sure that we are resilient enough to get there. And that also even changes the dynamics amongst your team members. So if everybody knows that we are carrying each other so that our team is more resilient, so that our team has better performance, you have people not throwing each other under the bus. You have increased collaboration and cooperation within your team. And those are kinds of teams that we see being high performing. If you look at the World Economic Forum, and their top future skills that people are going to have in the top 10 is collaboration, right? So companies are wanting to hire for team players. Are you someone that won't upset the dynamics of our organization? So as a leader, you want to ensure that you're creating an environment that allows us to sustain energy so that we can have sustained performance to meet results.
Very good. So, Siki, I'll share with you a thought which is probably a little at a tangent, but it's about collaboration.
Mm,
My journey, particularly in the last almost 19 years now that I've been in the corporate world, I find that that is probably one of the most focused areas where companies need to work. And unfortunately, they don't. They don't
yeah.
look at collaboration as importantly as they should. So when we have a 3 days, let's say an annual sales conference, and many times I'm told to do a team building program on the first day, and then the rest of the 2 days they do their own internal programs in which they typically talk about what was a target last year and whether it was achieved or underachieved or whatever, and how
Mm.
are we going to achieve our target next year. So it is all about review of the last year and projection of the next year. And at the end of it, generally I've seen that there's a pattern to it, that on the last day they will have an awards night. So the first day I have hammered into their mind that you need to work collaboratively and be very high performing teams. On the third day, when I see the awards happening, not a single, not even one award for a team, all individual awards. Everyone is being talked about, the best performer of this region. Nobody talks of which region performed highest. Okay, so I'll give you an example.
Absolutely. And can I just add to that, Sushil? So it's not just about the team, but as leaders, you often find that at these strategy sessions, they are already 3 steps ahead of the team. So as a leader, you've done the hard mental work before you get to getting buy-in and monitoring performance. So your own personal energy management, your own personal resilience, and your own ability to bounce forward as a leader is important. Your ability to think at multi-levels, your ability to feel, so to have empathy for your staff and your different team members, and your ability to act on what needs to happen in the moment to ensure that we are getting results is very important. And for leaders to also understand that if you burn out, and I like to highlight this for entrepreneurs, where you are the business, right? And to understand that you can't afford to burn out, because if you're not there, then there's no one there to run the business. And if you're a leader of a big organization and you have a vision that's going to take 5 to 10 years to play out, you also need to make sure that you're managing your energy in such a way that you can see through the rollout of that particular vision. So energy management on a personal level, acknowledging teams and having collaboration so that no one's burning out across the board is extremely important.
Absolutely. And you just said this, managing energy levels. So I always also talk to people when they're doing my team building programs. I tell them it's more than team building, sorry,
Mhm.
time management. It is energy management. It's you have to manage
Absolutely.
your energy more than managing your time. Okay. Now, coming back to what I was telling you, that I'll just quote you a little example of the army. In the army, for example, in our training, we have a 40 kilometers march. Now, we never in the war imagine that there'll be a situation where I have to walk 40 kilometers in the war. It never happens. Yet we are
Mm.
made to do that. The reason is that is called a confidence march, that we get to understand that this human body is capable of
Yeah.
walking 40 kilometers, right? How it happens is that one evening at about 5 or so, we would start the march. It happens in teams, and there is a competition. There are 12 companies, so you have to see which company is going to come first. You are not walking in your track suits with your comfortable sports shoes and all. You are walking in your boots,
Yeah.
which weigh almost 2 to 3 kgs. You're walking or marching with your packs and your rifle and all that. So you are not as comfortable as you normally would be otherwise. And with that rifle of yours, with your weapons, you're going to reach the other end 40 kilometers away, and you walk throughout the night because it is cooler at night to walk. The company that comes first is decided by the last man in. So they
Yeah.
don't care who came first. So what happens is, because the results are going to be taken from the last man in, what happens is that the strongest people get right behind to, what we say, bring up the tail,
Yeah.
because the weakest people are there. So if a person is not able to walk, you'll first say, okay, give me your rifle. A strong guy will carry two rifles, and
Mm.
if he still can't do it, maybe another person or another strong person would take his pack and say, okay, give me this. So you'll make his weight light, and so on. So the idea is that how does the strategy work is, keep keep supporting the weakest person. But in
Mm.
the corporate, I don't see this happening at all.
Yeah, and that's such a beautiful illustration, such a wonderful picture of good leadership, what we also like to call servant leadership, and then good team morale and collaboration. That there's an African proverb that says that if you want to go far, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go
Go together.
together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So that was wonderful. Now, Siki, I also found in my experience, when I've been talking about resilience and all, sometimes I've come across people who would say that I don't think that really works. Planning is guessing. For example, there's a book in which the first chapter is planning is guessing. And there are two American authors who say that's all nonsense. What do you plan for? We planned so
Mhm.
much. Then the recession came and all plans went for a six. So there's no need to plan and waste your time. Live your life the way it happens. Live on daily, whatever happens, respond to that. So, what would you say to people like this who feel that resilience and then all this idea of bounce forward and all is futile because we can't predict the future? What would you
Yeah,
say
that
to
that's that's such a good one. You know, we absolutely can't predict the future. So the first thing I would say is that planning is not an effort to control the future, right? You are fooling yourself if you're thinking that because I have a plan, I'm somehow controlled the future or mitigated the risks of the future. But planning is a pathway to success, is a pathway to action. And the human mind is very fascinating in that way that if you give it a framework, if you give it a target, it knows and understands the parameters that it needs to work according to, and that kind of, if I think about the military and stories that I've heard, is, that discipline to get out of bed at a certain time, to do your bed, to have breakfast at a certain time. It gives you structure. And as human beings, we function really well when we have structure. And yes, there definitely are scenarios. In entrepreneurship, we talk about having a startup runway, and your runway is only as long as what your resources allow for. So if your budget is running out, if your time is running out, you need to get up and flying within that time frame. So yes, there are definitely scenarios where we will build the plane while we are flying, but even in those scenarios, we have some kind of plan. We have an idea of the direction that we want to go. We have an idea of who are the team players that are required. We have an idea of what is it that we're trying to execute. And even though that might change along the way, we at least started out with a common direction of where we want to go. And that's the important thing, because otherwise you just have people sitting around with no idea of where to go. And even you as a person, you also don't know how to direct your efforts and your energy on a day to day basis. So if you can think about planning and being prepared for things that might happen according to those plans, not as security, to say that I've mitigated for every potential thing that might happen, but as a roadmap to follow and to navigate where you're trying to go. That's a much better way of looking at it. And then to say, okay, let us plan for where it is that we're trying to go. And even if life moves us in a different direction, we at least started with something to figure out how to navigate.
the moment you said that the plan is not to control the future, the thought that came in my mind, I thought you might say and followed it up by saying it is to be prepared for the future. Okay,
Yes.
that you really speaking, that plan is only there to prepare you and prepare you for various contingencies. And we have a comment from one of our viewers, Shankar Singh Shekhawat, who's saying planning is for both getting the best and being prepared for the worst. And
Yes.
uh, I'll also highlight here one important thing. In the army, when we're talking about planning, we also talk a lot about contingency planning, means alternative plan, means if this doesn't happen, then what will I do, and if this doesn't happen, what will I do?
Mhm.
When you do that, when the thinking process happens, that means you are examining various situations that can happen, and you are better prepared. There is a case, and I'm not naming the operation and the general, but there's a very important operation that
Mhm.
happened in India. And I was talking to the general who conducted it, who was the main person who was in charge of that operation. And he told me, he said, Sushil, we had 14 plans. We had 14 plans, because of a very unique operation, we did not
Mm.
have luxury of having any information about the enemy, and there was no enemy. It was an internal aggression thing. So we had no information, and we had to we had to flush out something. So he said we made 14 plans, but what went in finally was a 15th plan. We had not even imagined it, because so many times
Yeah.
you can't predict the future. Okay, the beauty is, he said, that 15th plan came to us on the go only because of the 14 plans, because you have done so much of thinking
Absolutely.
that those 14 plans helped you to create the 15th plan. So all those who feel that planning is a waste of time, I think they need to reconsider, because, as you said, the planning gives you a structure, it
Mhm.
prepares you mentally. And when you have had a plan, let's say in a team, and the entire team knows the plan, then when things go wrong, there are, if my team has 30 people, there are 30 brains absolutely like ready to come out with an alternative. But you have not planned.
Completely.
If you have not planned, all 30 are going to be thinking raw. So that's
Yes.
the
And
difference.
absolutely, that's such a good point. And just to add on to Shankar's point over there, there's a quote by Maya Angelou that says, hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and that way nothing in between will surprise you. So it's really thinking about, I might not cover everything, but if I've covered enough in the moment when I need to, my brain has already gone and practiced that system of thinking so that I can come up with the best solution in the moment.
Very good. Yeah, thank you so much. Right. So uh, we are almost coming to the end of our time, but I still have one or two more things which I thought I must ask you before you go. And the next question I would ask you is that how can how can we strike a balance between
Mhm.
living in the present moment and preparing for the future to ensure long term success? We do want to enjoy our present, but we can't be oblivious. We can't forget the future. We can't say that, okay, we live in the present all the time, but unaware of what's going to happen in the future. What happens if you just live in the present and don't take care of these things?
Yeah, such a excellent question, that one. So in my book, My Hall of Mentors, I speak about one of my mentors that I learned from around finding work-life balance. And I remember when I met her, I was in my early 20s and I was, going, how do I balance work and family and all these goals that I have? And she said to me the most beautiful thing that I still apply today. She said that in life, there are things that are a glass ball and there are things that are a rubber ball. The rubber ball things are things that if you drop this ball, they will bounce back in a day, in a week, in a month, in a couple of years, but at some point they will bounce back. And the things that are a glass ball are the things in your life that if you drop this ball, it can shatter, it can break, and the chance of putting it together is very slim, So it's really hard to put together a piece of glass or a mirror if it's broken or if it's shattered into pieces. And she said life is really about how do you juggle these, so you can be juggling a bunch of rubber balls, and that's fine. Just make sure that in that time you don't drop the glass ball. And that's such a beautiful analogy for me. So when I think about living in the present and thinking about the future, so yes, I'm fine. I'm financially thinking about how do I secure my family? I need to work. I need to build my business. Fantastic. But then there's moments where I have to go, am I sacrificing the quality of relationship with my family now for a future that I'm hoping to have with them? And yes, you could build a really good life for your family, but by the time you wake up, your children are out the house and you don't have a relationship with them and they care more about hanging out with their friends than hanging out with you as a parent. So you also want to think about long term. My actions in the present, are they sowing into the kind of future I want to reap? And really just checking yourself every now and then to go, Have I been doing things that are going to create the kind of future I want for myself? Am I cultivating relationships that I'm going to reap from in the future? Am I working in my business in such a way that there will be a reward for me in the future? And that's the balance that we should strike. And that's kind of the checkbox that we should have for ourselves and go, make sure that you're not sacrificing things that are what life is for the things that are what life is about.
Very good. So I think you put it very very simply and very convincingly. And thank you very much for that. So yes, that brings us to almost the end of our conversation now. But before we end, uh, tell me about, or tell the viewers, give the, if there was a message to give them, could be one or two tips on how to bounce forward, or in today's world, in the present context of today's world, two three actions that people should start taking from today to get onto the process of bouncing forward, what would they be?
So one thing, going back to our conversation around planning, is to do that, right? And when I say planning, I'm not talking about putting together a strategy for, the next 10 years. And you can if you have that capacity. But a tool that I like to use is what the Japanese call ikigai, so finding your sweet spot. So really taking the time to really think through what matters for you, to think through what do I know how to do? What do I love to do? What does the world need? And what are people willing to pay for? And what is that thing in the middle that allows me to live out my life in a manner that has purpose, in a manner that has meaning, and in a manner that is rewarding and also adds value for other people, right? And to evaluate your business, your job, your career, and go, am I living these things out on a daily basis? And this is important because even when you get tired in a business that you love doing, right? So there's pressures and there's lots of demand on you. Even if you do get tired, you can always remember the why that underpins the reason for the things that you are doing. So what my first thing to people would be to think about your ikigai and kind of find that true north that you are following. My second tip would be to do your goal setting, right? So earlier on, I spoke about your life pie and understanding that you're a multifaceted individual and there are many segments to your life. So think beyond just your job and just your family obligations. What else would you like to do as an individual? And set those goals. And once you've set those goals, to go out and find mentors that can help you bridge the gap. So where you know that you don't have the knowledge or the means to bridge the gap, find somebody who has already attained that success so that you can ask them, how do I navigate this space? One, in such a way that I can achieve this goal, and two, in such a way that I don't waste my time and energy trying to get there because they've already made all the mistakes. A quote by John C. Crosby says that a mentor is a brain to pick, an ear to listen, and a push in the right direction. So you want to find the people that can help you navigate that particular space. And then the third thing, which wouldn't be complete in a conversation around bounce forward if I didn't mention this, is to manage your own ecology personally and then your own ecosystem. So to think about yourself, if you drop a stone in the water and you see the ripples that go out, you are in the center, and that ripple effect impacts your family, your friendship circles, your colleagues, your community, and it goes out, into impacting the globe. So to think about what is the impact that you have as that rock dropping in the water. And if you don't like the impact that you're having, to change it, so whether it's changing something according to boost so that you show up with more energy and resilience, whether it's changing how you think, so something around your mindset to be more positive, to work more efficiently, to work towards things, or whether it's towards how you act, so how do I be more efficient, effective? How do I exercise kindness? How do I exercise gratitude? Whatever it is, so that that ripple effect creates the community around you that reflects what you want in life, so that you are able to consistently bounce forward, right? So it helps us, I think, to have a good ikigai and to have our goals and mentors if we're not creating an ecosystem that allows us to bounce forward as we achieve all of that.
Oh, that was very nice. That was very nice, very practical. So again, I'll tell you all that you're saying. I do goal setting. That is my favorite subject. And that is what Brian Tracy has said in the endorsement of my book, $1 Million Second. He said
Yeah.
Sushi has a wonderful system of goal setting. I call it set it, get it. And he says that'll change your life. Of course, he says, and that'll double your income. But I don't claim that, because doubling your income is your problem, not mine.
Yes.
I can't guarantee anyone that you'll double your income, so I don't do that.
I can give you the mindset for it, but you still have to do the work.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then out of the same teaching that you do, somebody will double it and somebody will half it also. So you don't know,
Yeah.
you know. And another thing is, yeah. Now tell me, uh, there are some people who came, not many, but I know that there'll be a lot of people who will be coming and watching this recording and live.
Mm.
So, how would you? I'm sure that there'll be people who like to contact you. So, how do people contact you? And would you give them something like a tool or something that you have, which would help them uh, remember what you said today, besides the
Absolutely.
have? Yeah.
Yes, so I have the As I Am Purpose Planner, and it's a tool that I use for my own goal setting every year. It's a tool that I use when I'm working with people one on one or in groups, and it takes you through visualization. I'm a big picture thinker. You have to see it in order to attain it, and then it takes you through finding your ikigai and setting your goals, and then thinking about how do you find mentors for each one of those, and then it takes you through drafting a purpose statement. So what is my reason for being? And what do I want to see happen in life? And then there's a segment in there on affirmations and declarations, and then also on finding mentors. So a very specific guided section on how do you approach mentors, and a list of actionable steps to take. And so this is a tool that I would like to gift people. So if you go to my website, www.ntsikim, which is my name. So www.ntsikim.co.za. You will find there's a free download there that you can utilize, or you can send an email to info@ntsikim.co.za, and we'll send you a free copy of the Purpose Planner. Otherwise, I am active across all social media at Ntsiki_Mkhize. I live on Instagram. That is where life happens the most for me. I'm also on LinkedIn as my secondary platform, but I do participate across all social media. So just type in my name and surname on social media at Ntsiki_Mkhize, and you can leave a comment, or you can send me a DM. But anytime I do a workshop or a free public engagement, I post that information up there. So you are always welcome to participate. I'd like to connect with our community in India. And then if you're interested in mentorship and business support, you can connect with us at Mentor. So again, you can go to www.mentor.co.za, or you can pop us an email at info@mentor.co.za, or you can find Mentor on Instagram and LinkedIn, and we will respond to you there.
Does it mean that you have to be a woman to go for your mentorship?
Yes, so specifically on Mentor, we are supporting female social entrepreneurs. So if you are a woman who's wanting to create a business and a life that has purpose, impact, and meaning, we'd love to work with you. And if you're wanting to create social impact through the business that you do, we would love to work with you. So please do get in touch with us. Or if you're listening and you'd like to mentor people, we are always open to hearing from mentors. So you can connect with us there. And in my personal capacity, if you'd like mentorship, then I do mentorship and coaching. So you can always reach me for that.
Thank you very much. And if, ladies and gentlemen, if nothing else works, tell me and I'll connect you to Ntsiki, because I'm
Yes.
connected with her on all platforms. So just in case you are not able to find the website or whatever, don't give up. I'm here to help you. And Siki, I'll be very, very happy to continue this association, because uh, it's really nice knowing you and knowing your work. And let's see how we can continue leveraging it for our growth, and for a mutual growth, I'll say. Uh,
Absolutely.
yes, and let's see how I can come to South Africa and how you can come to India. Let's do that.
That is definitely the goal for next year, and we will let people know once that happens. I'm declaring that it's going to happen, and I will be in India for a conference or an event. I look forward to seeing and meeting everybody in person.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here and choosing to invest your time in this session. I hope you really enjoyed it as I did. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Lovely spending the afternoon with you, Sushil. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you.